Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Hello.
Hey, Emerson.
Hey, yeah, excuse me for a minute. Oh. I was looking at the news this afternoon. Man was complaining about going to jury duty during this time. And then it wrote, I just remember I had a jury duty summons I need to respond to.
Hey, Emerson, so did I. I got out of it.
Oh,
you
did
just respond.
Yeah.
And, you know.
I got it like back in May. And
oh, yeah, you need to respond.
And you got to do it 10 days before you report. So,
is it for federal court?
No, it's in the county.
Oh, really?
Mine was federal court.
Yeah.
Emerson, I don't think they're seating any juries right now, so you just need to respond.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
I think they're still at level 0 at the courthouse.
Oh, that'd
be good. Well, we don't want to go visit you in Clayton at the Justice Center, so you better.
No, you don't.
I think 1982, I think, was the last time I served on a jury.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I've never been called in the county, but I've been called several times in the city.
Yeah, the city you're on about a 2-year rotation. In the county, it's it's a lot less frequent.
Yeah.
Everyone's here, Mayor, whenever you wanted to get started.
Okay, we've got all of us, and we're at exactly 6:16. Good evening and welcome to our September 1st council meeting. I hope everyone had a great month off and you're all rested and life is great. And, you know, anyhow, let's start tonight. Does anybody have anything on the regular agenda? If not, we'll move over to our meeting issues and updates. And so let's go with Pam.
Hi. I don't have any issues or updates except just a request that we consider talking about getting back together and having meetings in person, like social distance meetings. That's all.
All right, we can talk about that with Katie and Jen and see what the requirements are and whether that fits in the council chambers or how that works.
Great, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Actually, I had that conversation with Katie earlier, and Chief Yowie said we have to limit the capacity to 17 people or less, and we can do it in person. And then, of course, Katie and Jen will take care of the other technology issues that need to take place.
For the public to participate. It would be limited to council, staff, and your applicants coming in and things like that, and then Zoom for the public.
Well, would y'all be willing to give that a try?
I think it'd be a good test run because allegedly we're supposed to be getting some kind of audio or video eventually in the next budget, so.
We'll see.
I would like to try it at some point soon.
Okay. We'll get Katie and Jen to sort of run this through the other council and staff and see if this works.
Okay.
Now, Pam, is that open to the public as well or just to the council members?
Well, it would be limited to in the public because you can't put that many people in the council chambers. So you couldn't have too many folks. As Katie said, what, only 17 people?
Correct.
So few, very few.
So you still have to do a hybrid of this and a Zoom meeting.
Right, so the public would have access. Karen, Alexander, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Well, it still concerns me a bit because I'm pretty much my father's sole contact with the outdoors. So I'm very conscious about what I expose myself to, because anything I'm exposing myself to, I'm exposing him to.
Okay, so it's a concern for you. David, do you have any updates?
No updates, Mayor.
Laura?
I actually do. Sustainability Commission met for the first time in quite a while. And as you may recall, they got a grant to distribute reusable bags for grocery use. Well, grocery stores, as you probably know, aren't letting you use those bags right now. So there was a lot of discussion about what to do. And I think the bottom line is that they're just going to hang on and see if they can extend a little bit and think about how to adjust to these times with that program. They also have asked that their next meeting be at least in part with the folks from SG Collaborative to talk about some of the sustainability issues related to that project. And so we're moving on now. You know, there's a little bit of a backlog of agenda items that we're working through because they were off for quite a while, understandably. The Business Development Commission has met actually twice since we last met, just given the way the calendar fell. One meeting was largely taken up by Joanne talking about the budget, but also then reviewing the social media use. It was a pretty detailed report that you have in your backup that is kind of interesting if you're interested in that stuff. One of the things that we know is that our social media program does a whole lot better when we use real people than when we use stock photographs. And so the more we can get of our businesses and our community and use those, the better off that program is. The second meeting, Jennifer Starkey reported back, one of the things that was cut out of the budget this time was some business profiles that were going to be used on social media that were going to be videotaped and produced. Jenny Starkey has arranged for an advanced film class at Webster University to do some of those. And so even though it's out of the budget, the project goes forward. So if you run into Jenny, please give her a big thank you for facilitating that. Holiday planning is underway. And then you can see it also, I think, in your backup, but businesses continue to open even in the face of the pandemic, which I think is good for our community.
Thank you, Laura. Karen?
I thought you were asking me about the question of meeting in place. Sorry, I did attend the library board meeting, the first meeting with them, and I thought that was very interesting. And one of the things that they spoke about first was at that time, which was the second week of July, they were going back to curb only service. They had been open for a small time. They opened the library to the public, but the municipal county libraries were having some concerns, and each time they had a scare or a concern, they tested everybody, and at least one person was always found that was asymptomatic. So they decided to close again and only do curbside. And at that point, which was at the beginning of July, well, the second week of July, they were going to just see how things went. Their biggest concern, of course, is safety. Janie Worthington started. She was the appointee from the meeting, and she had a great idea about different things that they may be able to look into in terms of providing more fun craft ideas for parents and kids, because those are something that's going over pretty well. And then the final thing that they discussed were the opportunities for having more outdoor events so that they could continue to engage or keep people engaged with the library, but doing it in a safe manner by having the events outdoors.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Emerson?
Just to make a mention, I had my first ARB meeting. It was very interesting. I will say that it was a very organized process, and although it was lengthy, but it went along very smooth. The participants on the panel, they was very attentive and actually made good adjustments for the individuals looking to make some type of change to their home. So it was a good process to watch. Although, like I said, we had quite a few, but they did a lot of pre-work and it was ready. So it was very enjoyable. And I also sat in on the Old Orchard Commission. They invited me to sit in, and that was very good. You know, they shared a lot on how COVID is affecting their businesses and some things that they're going to try to do. So that was a good meeting. Our businesses in Webster, they are hurting. So we need to hopefully do whatever we can to support them in their effort of keeping up their business flow and volume. Some was hurting more than others. Those individuals that didn't depend on walk-in business, they were doing okay, but there was quite a few that was represented that they were waiting on somebody to walk in the door almost every day. So something we can keep in mind to support our businesses in Webster.
Thanks, Emerson. Sarah?
Yes, I was able to attend the Crossroads, the business district meeting a few weeks ago now for the first time, which was great. And primarily discussion was around the streetscape project, and it sounds like that's been something that's been in the works, but also having a hard time getting pushed through with approval by the county for the piece of it that they have. So it sounds like they're kind of back to the drawing board and going to try to present a new option or a kind of one of the original options, but not the one that was the first choice of everybody. So we'll be anxious to hear how all of that goes. And also went to the Parks and Rec Commission meeting, the first time they had met in quite a while. Also, it's been several months, I think. I wasn't the only one who was having my first meeting. There's quite a few new members of that commission, which was to see, and there's still one opening on that commission also. So hopefully we'll get some applicants in for that. So there was a lot to update since they hadn't met since the decision not to open the pool. So there was a little bit of discussion around that. And it's been a while talking about the playgrounds and in the parks and what the path is to get those open. And it sounds like Scott's going to be working on getting that approval from the county, which is required since there's some special steps we have to take to get the playgrounds open. But it sounds like folks are anxious for that to happen, and hopefully will be responsible once it occurs. And we talked a little bit about the tennis courts and the delays there. That it seems like maybe now we're behind us. It seems like they're a little more finished than they were when we met. But last week, at least, there were pretty substantial delays in the deliverables by the contractors there. So we're still waiting for that to get fully completed, and it's past deadline. So, but it was a good meeting, a pretty long one for them, I think. And but they've got some. It sounds like the folks they've got and the new folks in the commission for sure are invested and engaged. It was lots of good discussion.
Great, thank you.
There was a very happy picture of the high school tennis team as they practiced on those courts for the first time. So,
oh, great!
It's very happy users in one part of our community.
Great, good to know. Joanne, do you have anything you want to add? Katie, Neil?
No, Mayor.
No, ma'am.
Okay, I have a couple of things that have gone on since we last met. I've spent an awful lot of time working with the mayors in Council District Number 5, trying to get some money from the COVID funds. You know, $47 million of the county COVID money that came from the feds is to go to municipalities, and it's supposed to go for COVID-related issues. And what's interesting is that in Council District 5, which is Lisa Clancy's district, everybody in her district is part of a municipality, unlike some of the council members who represent unincorporated St. Louis County. Also in her district, almost every one of us has a municipal fire department. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with this, if you are in a fire protection district, that fire protection district has its own taxing funds. They put a property tax on residents that pays for fire and EMS. For those of us who live in municipalities, that police, that fire and EMS lug comes out of our general fund. So in a city like Chesterfield, where they have a fire protection district, their general fund, their municipality does not pay for fire protection. So we've been trying to get it across to our county council member that has put an extra lug on all of us, because we all have fire departments. That's where a lot of the COVID expenses have come, with overtime and everything else that's associated with that. So we're sort of on a mission to ensure that those of us who are in municipalities and who have fire departments get some money out of this $47 million. And we've been doing studies, and Joanne and other city managers have done financial analyses for us. And so we're just working at it, but it's been pretty time consuming to do that.
Has Lisa been responsive, Mayor?
She has met with us.
Thank you.
She has met with us and is listening to us. So we'll see where that goes. But you have to remember, she's one of 5 too. So there's a lot of competing kind of stuff out there for this $47 million. And there's sympathy for a lot of the North County communities that have experienced bad COVID rates and that sort of thing. But this money was intended for expenses associated with COVID. And those other kinds of monies for income and everything else really ought to come out of a different bucket. So there's $175 million overall in a great big huge bucket. They need to take a bucket out to help these communities that have been really hit. The rest of it, we're just looking for our own to try to get reimbursed.
Absolutely. The only reason I asked is just because of her public comments, and I know that this is probably going to be a tough sell with her, it seems like.
Yes. Yes.
So are we saying that the COVID related expenses that we've incurred or that we are looking to have reimbursed are specific to the fire department?
No, no. All of us have encountered a huge decline in finances because of COVID to try to fill in our budget deficits. And surprisingly, the community that's been the worst hit is Clayton. And it's because they really don't have any huge grocery stores, big box stores that fill in with that sales tax. And so they're really down millions of dollars. And what we're saying is, because of that, we all of our municipalities, we still have to pay for fire. We have to pay for police, those public works people that are necessary to keep police and fire running. All of that goes into our need. Does that help, Karen?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, but my understanding was, though, that the CARES money has to be spent on, it can't make up revenue deficits. It has to be used for expenses that are specifically COVID related. Am I misunderstanding that?
Well, it depends on how you interpret that.
Okay.
It depends on how you interpret that. And part of it is that we still have the need to be able to fund police and fire and public works and everybody else. And that has come because of the COVID. So that's the interpretation.
Some of this is a disagreement over interpreting what the law says then.
Well, because then if you just talk about paying people for masks, what are you going to do with that $47 million?
I'm not arguing for that position necessarily. That's just in what I've read was my understanding. So I wanted clarification.
Yeah, it's actually how you interpret that. So the Arts Commission is met. We're ready for Rabbit. Did you get the documents today, Neil?
No, and I left Keeling 2 voicemails, but did not hear back from him. I'm concerned he may be on vacation. So what's happening, what we're waiting for is that he offered to prepare the lease. And again, that was important to me because I wasn't sure who we needed to indemnify. So the lease itself is just going to basically say who takes responsibility for what, its risk assignment. And so I needed to know who it was that was there. So he said he would send me a copy of the lease, but we still don't have it. And I don't have a call back from him. But he was really good about calling me back. That's what makes me think he's out of town. And I'm confident I'll hear from him within the next 24 hours.
Great. Oh, we're anxious
Bill
to get
Keeling
the Rabbit
is a lawyer at Armstrong.
Teasdale?
Right.
Okay. The Police Community Engagement Board has met, and the group is still working on a survey and how we get that out and who it goes to. They've done a pretty good job with that. They're working on a presentation to take to community meetings, but again, that's kind of hard to do. Some communities are meeting on Zoom, communities being groups and organizations like Rotary and the North Webster Neighborhood Coalition. So they're working on that. The SG Collaborative is holding a town hall meeting on September the 24th. So make sure you sign up for that. And we need to continue our little PR group and talk about moving forward, because to me, after listening to the meeting last night, the most imperative thing that we need is a landing place for community input. We have to do that. Jennifer has a sort of page, not a sort of, she does have a page done for this project, but we need to up that and get this landing spot going. Jen's really willing to work on that, because after last night, it occurred to me that if I'm on a town hall meeting and I really feel about X, pro, con, some issue, where do I go to convey that information to the city? So we absolutely need to do that. We'll talk about that this week. What else? Metro mayors, you don't want to know about how we're all collaborating on the airport. And finally, I sent you all a note about driveway requirements. I'd like to be able to pursue those if you all don't mind. Neil, I think, and Mara have talked a little bit about what we need to do. I am concerned the ARB next meeting, whenever it is, it has a whole series of additions and garages and that sort of thing. And it seems to me that anybody who does that now has to widen their driveway before they're even allowed to put an addition on the back of their house. And I am quite concerned about that requirement now. I guess what we're doing now is making sure that people comply with every code change before they're allowed to do any new construction. I don't understand it, but if you don't mind, I'd like to pursue it.
Mayor, they're meeting Thursday, the ARB.
Good. Will you note that for me? See if they're requiring people who are putting on additions, because there's a whole string of them on that agenda. If they have to now widen their driveway in order to be allowed to put an addition on?
Yeah, I'll mention tomorrow. I think she's online anyway, but how that would affect their construction project.
Yeah.
I mean, Mayor, I think we should hear from Mara a little bit of the rationale behind that, and what options residents have before we change the ordinance. Meaning, what options do residents have to, ameliorate their situation?
So Pam, if I may,
it seems like there's a board of adjustment or a variance, or maybe they could just work with staff on the individual situations.
Neil?
Yeah, what Mara and I had talked about, and we cleared this with Joanne to make sure that everything was okay, was to bring you all information on exactly what it means, how it applies, impact it has on other code sections, so that you saw it in some context, and then obviously make a decision from there. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that it was more than just this particular section that would be affected. So again, that's what my email was about, was to make sure that that's out there. So I think you're right, Pam, that information needs to be there, but Mara and I are going to gather it and bring it to you at a work session of your designation.
Okay.
Neil, will that slow up or stop some projects that's going on now?
It depends. I don't know what's on Emerson, and so I'll have Mara take a look at that. Obviously, she knows what's going through there. It may or may not, but we'll certainly look at that. And I know her approach on this is to make sure that she tries to work through it all without, significant cost if it can be avoided. But she's on there. I'm sure she's hearing. So we'll talk to her and get back to you on that.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can we have a clear answer on when this 10-foot width has to be in place? Because the way the mayor described it, it sounds like even if you're not doing anything to your driveway, sometimes that becomes a requirement. I just want to make sure that when you all communicate with us, it's clear the circumstances under which this is required.
Got it.
I think Mara, come on. My concern is though that since this isn't on the agenda, we're going to run short on our other items. But if you want to hear from Mara, I can have her come on because I know she's in attendance.
Let's just put this on the next work session and see if we can get this cleared up, and ask her to clear up whether or not current projects require that 10-foot wide requirement before anybody can even do any sort of addition to their house. I'd like to know that, but maybe we put that on the next work session if that's the case.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. We'll continue on to our next topic, and our next topic is police department staffing update, and I believe that goes to Dale.
It does, but I first want to give a quick summary. So we have decided to implement a process where we're not increasing the number of staff in the police department, but we are going to switch over the position that was a police officer position that is currently vacant, and we're going to switch it into a sergeant position. And I'm going to let Dale explain why we want to do this, or why we will be doing this.
Thanks, Joanne. Am I going to be able to share my screen, Katie?
Yes.
I'll make this real brief. I think it's pretty clear, but especially since this wasn't, it's a small technical change in the approved personnel in the budget. We wanted to make sure that the council was aware of it. The plan is to take one of the detectives which is here in the community, in the criminal investigation unit, and create a sergeant's position in the community service unit. Right now, that unit's being supervised by a captain. There's a lot of independent actions by a lot of the people that the captain really has a hard time keeping track of everything because he has so many people under his supervision. So if we're able to take one of the detectives, change that into a sergeant's position, the estimated first year cost would only be about $664. And the reason we want to do it will have a substantial increase in the oversight and accountability of the community service officers, especially SROs. It would increase our options to have a relief supervisor. Right now, if a supervisor takes an extended vacation or wants to take off on the weekend, it's very difficult for us to backfill because we have a limited number of supervisory positions. So what happens is sometimes we end up actually having a patrol officer who we call a first relief. We try not to let that happen, and it doesn't happen too often, but we'd like to decrease that even more. It's important for us to have a supervisor on duty at all times whenever possible. It would also allow for consolidation of duties and responsibilities in this position. They would still continue to do detective work, but then they would also supervise the SROs, community service officer, and the COP officers. It would additionally help us, and then we get somebody cross-trained in all of these and experience in all these different aspects of the jobs. Would substantially increase interaction with the school district. Right now, the captain has a hard time making sure that he's in contact with the SROs and coordinating, being a liaison with the school district. This would help substantially with that. And then also, there's a strong potential to increase our diversity in the supervisory staff, which we think is important. We got strong female candidates, which there's a good possibility that we'd be able to do that. So those are justifications for it. If you have any questions, I'm certainly be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Questions for Dale?
Chief, you gave us the first year financial impact. What's the long-term financial impact of a move like this?
The second year, it's an increase of about, sorry, I don't have the figure exactly for me, of about another $2,500 to $3,000.
And does that continue to rise year over year?
Well, the initial salary is $78,000, and the salary for a supervisor increases in 4 years to, I believe it's $85,000. So yes, it does increase year after year, but it'll be 4 years before they reach the top. The other thing that Joanne and I have talked about, I mean, we're authorized for 50 people in the police department. We have 2 sworn positions right now that are open. We're going to leave those open to see where the budget is, budget picture is for this year. I mean, there's a good chance that with the financial situation that we're not going to fill those positions.
All right, anybody else have a question for Dale? Okay, Dale, thank you very much for that explanation and also for that chart. Most appreciated.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. All right, you can take that off and we'll go back to Joanne, who's going to do the monthly financial statement update with us and probably share her screen.
Yes, I'm going to try to share my screen. Just have to find the right one. Why don't I see it? Oh, sorry, I didn't have it open.
It's touchy to do screen sharing. There you go.
Oops, I got the wrong one. Now I'm trying to share with you the public hearing one. Now it's high. Give me just 1 second. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
So I sent to you, or actually via Jennifer, there was the fourth quarter report, which is actually the end of year report, and it was sent this afternoon in the packet of information. I sincerely apologize. I couldn't send it to you quicker than that because yesterday was the 31st of August. So it was the last day in which we had our information to post. But I will go through with you what that narrative was, but I just wanted to show you the numbers from this spreadsheet first. So this is very similar to what I presented to you last month. My estimates were very close to what we ended up with, except that our revenues were about 40,000 more than what I thought they would be when I projected them last month. So we ended up, I believe this is really going to be very close to where we end up year end. Now we still have some adjustments potentially from our audit. That audit will be close to the end of September. And on occasion, they find mistakes that we've made where we posted something to the wrong account or something like that. It's rare, Usually whatever we present to them, they don't usually find very many mistakes at all or very many journal entries that we have to make for adjustments. So you can see on the revenue side, this column to the left, the 2020 amended budget, then the next one is the 2020 year-to-date actual, 14,913,201. That's where I believe we are at end of year and we shouldn't have many adjustments. What that means is that we've collected 92.6% of the budget. So we are under budget. We didn't collect 1.1 or $1.2 million that we were hoping to collect. And you can see under the percentage of budget received for property tax, for example, we received more than what we expected. Intergovernmental, we were very close. Sales tax, we projected to be at 80% by the end of the year. Thankfully, we're at 92.9%. Licenses, 93.1%. So this would include the motor vehicle licenses, business licenses, and things like that. We still have business licenses that need to be renewed that haven't. Some businesses, unfortunately, have closed down, but I don't know that there have been that many, and so on and so forth. I think that more of the issue will be that the business licenses will just be submitted late as opposed to us not getting them at all. But we did extend that until June 15th for submittal, so that's why we haven't received some of them also. And then the next line down, the inspection fees and permits. We just had a very nice year with building permits and others. And our residents have just continued to work on their homes and on commercial facilities. And so that's why that percentage is as high as it is. For utility taxes, unfortunately, that estimate, which is the wow.
Utility taxes.
Yes, so this was just at the beginning of the year where I thought we would be on the amended budget. So these numbers are just whatever was presented and approved last year. I don't ever usually request that the city council make adjustments to the revenue during the year. So this is where I thought we would be, $3,265,000. Unfortunately, we collected $2,879,000. The water and gas numbers were very close. The numbers that were not close were the electric and the telephone. Electric was partially because businesses were closed down. And I really didn't know when I did those budget estimates how that would impact, so I didn't do much of anything with those numbers. The telephone part is an issue because we continuously have the issue where the cell phone companies are not paying on what we had agreed to with regard to gross receipts. So we are working with Cunningham, Vogel, and Roast on an attorney firm on that issue. The next item under fines, probably pretty well explained. There are not as many tickets being issued. And at the time of when everything was shut down, nobody was getting out and doing anything either. And of course, our courts they're collecting payments, and now they're actually having a few Zoom sessions. They had 2 in August, but there aren't very many people yet who are participating in the Zoom sessions. And then the service fees are down pretty low. This is the ambulance and the cable. And then recreation fees are very sad. We are under budget by $645,000 on that. And then finally, the other income is almost 150%, and we did fabulously with the investments. And there are other items in the other income category. That includes the $107,000 in reimbursements to the city from those 3 partners for the tennis court project. That is Webster University, Webster Grove School District, and Eric's Hall. And then, of course, the $50,000 that we received from Chapman Ventures for expenses related to the Pacific redevelopment proposal. And then some other school resource officer item. I can't remember the amount on that, and some other items, but that's why that's as large as it is. Are there any questions so far? Then on the expenditure side, this is very similar to what I provided last month. We didn't have too many more that hit in fiscal year 2020, but there were a few. One of the ones I'd like to point out to you is on the insurance line. I was not over budget, or we weren't over budget when I did this last month, but we had unemployment insurance that we had to pay for those individuals who filed for unemployment. And that was a little over $19,000, and that pushed us over budget. You may recall that for public entities, there's the split. So those entities only had to pay 50% of the unemployment cost, but because we are a reimbursable employer and because we're a municipality, none of that was provided by the federal government to us. We had to pay all of that ourselves. So therefore, that's why that one is over budget. The others were already the manager, clerk, council, et cetera. That one was already over budget last time. And then the fire one was 2. The only other item on here that I'd like to point out is I wanted to explain the transfer out because I think that is confusing to some individuals. That was the tennis court project. We decided to use money from our reserves in order to pay for part of the cost of the tennis court project that wasn't funded by the 3 participating entities and the municipal park grant. And we had discussed this and agreed to it a few years ago. And so that's why that is in there. And it was something that was approved by the city council as well. So items that we really hadn't expected was the difference between the change in fund balance of $933,730 and that transfer out. So that would be about $528,000 that we didn't plan on using reserves for. So if these numbers, which again, I expect them to be very close to being what will be the final numbers for 2020, we will end the year with a fund balance of $10,900,909. Are there any other questions regarding it? Do you understand what transfers in are or anything like that? Do I need to explain any of it? I just don't want to be confusing. I'm just pleased because I think we're in a better position than I thought we would be at this time. And I hope we can continue. Well, that went fast. I didn't expect it to go this fast. So I don't have any more on the actual financial statements then.
All clear, Joanne.
Yeah, thank you for all that information. Thank you very much. Any questions? Good. Thanks for keeping us up to date with this. We really appreciate it.
Well, as you know, I love talking about the city's financial situation and finance and accounting and all that. So anytime.
It's great. It is great.
You need to get out more, Joanne.
I know, right?
Okay. Let's move on then to our appointments to boards and commissions. And let's see what we have here. If we approve Bill 9129 tonight, which I'm hoping we do, we would formally appoint Angela Brooks as an alternate member. Is that agreeable with everyone? She came to the last meeting, participated. It's going to be a really good member. So that's okay with all of you?
Mayor, that's absolutely okay. But one of the things that I did want to discuss, and I think you and I probably talked about it a bit, and I don't know if this is the forum in which to do it. What we discovered last year on the first year of the Police Community Engagement Board, that we were never able to successfully fill the student role on the board.
Yeah.
And one of the things that with both of these ladies that we were just considered, both Cindy and Angela are wonderful, but one of the primary attractions for Cindy was the fact that she is so heavily involved with youth, and her commitment to bringing them and engaging them with the police community. And she would really like to have her impact on the community board have a lot to do with the youth. And I think that I would like to know how, if we could consider that particular role, because it's been for seniors, and they bless their hearts, they like it on their resumes and their applications when they're applying for college, but there's so much going on in their senior years that we haven't been able to get anyone to engage. And so what I would like to consider is that role be reorganized so that the individual fulfilling that role has the responsibility of youth engagement for that seat, so that we just don't have that seat vacant of a high school student or the youth. And then the seat that I just vacated, I mean, that's a full seat. I don't know what would be involved in that just being a full seat as opposed to an alternate seat. But my thought is that youth seat is basically not, it's not utilized. And I think it could be better utilized if we had an individual, whenever we're appointing for that role, appointing for a role to be responsible for engaging the youth. And then we still have a full, not alternate, but seat that's being filled because of the seat that I vacated.
So what you're suggesting, to me, is not a bad idea, because I've been sitting with them also, and we never get a youth that comes, is that, and Neil, if you have that ordinance there, instead of putting an alternate role in there, we would just take that piece, and I don't have the ordinance in front of me right here. What we would do is take the seat that has been designated for a student and designate it for a representative of youth or students.
The youth position is only, they are not a voting member. So,
pardon me?
The youth position is not a voting member.
And so I think that—
Oh, they're not a voting member?
Yeah. No.
So
is that based on a law, or is that based on what? Or is that based on our ability to determine who's a voting member and who's not?
It was a consensus.
It was enacted in the ordinance. So again, it's just relying upon what the structure set up in the ordinance.
Okay.
So is that something that cannot be changed? Is the ordinance based on what, or is it just based on what we decided it was going to be?
Well, the beauty of you being on the council is everything can be changed except the charter, which requires a vote of the people.
Okay.
Laura?
I would argue that it's too soon for us to give up on the youth representative. I would like us to keep that in play, and also, right, this can be an and both situation. I think Karen is absolutely right. Adding another member with some initiative to engage youth. I don't think we had a youth person on there necessarily because they were going to bring a lot of other people who were younger into the discussion. We had them on there for their perspective, like we defined a business owner and a doctor and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I think we can do both things, but I am very wary of giving up on, especially since we're in these times. I know that we tried a couple of times. I don't think that we should focus on seniors, to be honest. I don't think there's that much difference in maturity between the junior year and the senior year. I think we can go a little younger so someone has some time to develop a relationship. with the commission. So I just advocate that, yes, I am happy to add someone, and I would love for them to be a full member. And I just want to not get rid of that youth member yet.
Okay.
So the section of the ordinance that deals with that youth member says, in addition to the above, and there are 7 sections above this, it says the superintendent of the Webster Grove School District shall select one student to serve as a youth liaison. The youth liaison must be at least 17 years old, reside in Webster Groves, and be a senior in high school during at least part of his or her term. So I don't think you're limited then to a senior, part of his or her term. The youth liaison shall serve for a term of 1 year and may not be reappointed. The youth liaison shall be entitled to participate in all board meetings, but shall not have a vote and shall not be counted towards a quorum. So that's what's there. That doesn't mean it can't be changed.
I'm happy to offer an amendment to strike the word senior if that gives us more flexibility.
Well, I think it still gives you the flexibility because they only have to have part of their term as a senior.
Okay.
And I just wanted to second what Laura said. I don't want to get rid of the youth participation yet, but I'd also like to point out that it doesn't have to be a Webster Groves High School senior. That it could also be a student that is attending private school that the superintendent can appoint. And I don't think that, and I think this is part and parcel to what you were saying, Karen, is that having that engagement, it has to expand beyond just public school attendees or students, because we have private school students in this area as well.
So, and all of that sounds great, but I think that one of the things that I really would like to see us include in this or amend or whatever we need to do is, just like we had a doctor, just like we had a business owner, just an individual whose role it is to develop youth interaction and engagement with the board.
Is that not what the Webster Grove School District representative is supposed to do? Tell us what's in there. I can't pull anything else up on another computer here.
So there are the membership qualifications start not less than 5. At least one shall be the owner of a business, irrespective of their place of residence. So they don't have to be Webster residents. One member shall represent the school district within the city, regardless of place of residence. One shall be a medical doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist, or other person skilled in issues that relate to community or police officer well-being and behavior. In selecting the members, the city council should consider the diversity of the community, possible membership from the not-for-profit institutions within the community, clergy, and civic organizations, and representations that reflect the demographics of the community, including race, age, gender, and geographic representation. The chief or his designee shall serve as an ex officio member. The city council shall select a city council liaison who shall not be a member of the board but shall attend and keep the city council apprised of what's going on there. And then the last one is the superintendent shall appoint the youth liaison. So those are the spots, and those are the ones that are supposed to fill those spots.
Okay.
So David's question was the role of the liaison with the school
district
to facilitate engagement with the kids? Because I don't know that.
I don't know that it necessarily says that one way or another.
The other thing is that we recognized that as a council and appointed Cindy because we recognize that need as a council. So that's something we can always do without necessarily writing it into the ordinance. So, okay.
At the risk of adding a layer of complication here, to David's point, since we have put in place that the superintendent chooses or recommends, we haven't really then had any process where we notify outside of the public school system that you can apply or participate. So maybe we can't fix that right now, and maybe it's up to the PCEB to give us a recommendation about how to do that. But it seems to me if we want a youth representative that is not defined only as someone from the Webster Groves school system, we need to put into place a process whereby we advertise beyond simply with the superintendent of the Webster Groves school system.
And this role could be something to help facilitate that as well, because it's you know, I guess, and I'm just trying to, in my mind, differentiate between what the role is for school district engagement and just youth engagement overall.
Mm-hmm.
And especially recognizing the fact that all Webster Groves citizens do not attend Webster Groves public schools. And I don't think that our interest is limited to participants of Webster Groves public schools, but of Webster Groves citizens.
Yeah, I do think, to your point, Karen, which I think is a good one about having somebody responsible for this, I do worry a little bit about changing the ordinance all the time when we define these, because, for example, in some of our other boards and commissions, we run into problems filling them because we have narrowly defined in the ordinance who can serve, like some of the business district ones come to mind. So to me, then the question becomes, I agree with your point entirely, but does it need to be in the ordinance, or is it something that we have as a commission policy or as something that we think about? And I don't know the answer to that question. So I guess I'm just sort of throwing it out there.
Right, and I'm not saying what does or doesn't need to be in the ordinance or not. I'm asking what is the process for addressing this.
Yeah.
And because with this being a new commission, you know, there wasn't a roadmap. It was set up in a way that we think this is what may work. Well, 1 year into it, we are seeing something that may be able to be done to enhance the effectiveness.
Is this the only commission that offers the specified youth role? I assume that it is, but have we ever kind of looked at the possibility of other ways of engaging youth in council meetings or, you know, boards and commissions? I guess I think it's great that we have a youth position on the police community engagement board. I would like to see more, not less of that.
Mm-hmm.
This is coming from someone who served as youth mayor of Tullahoma, Tennessee, her senior year. We had a great active program. We learned a lot about how cities work. So I have some experience from a long time ago. But I think there's, you know, there may be some interest out there if we had a way for folks to engage that way.
Which is, again, perhaps a need to have someone whose role is very is really sort of centered or deeply engrossed in that, to reach out to let them know, because if you don't know to engage.
You know, Karen, what you're talking about, I think, is an extremely important topic, and I think it expands a little bit beyond just youth engagement. It kind of goes to our Webster community conversations that we've been having regarding how do we reach people and how do we have those conversations. And I think youth is part of that diversity that we as council and as a government don't necessarily reach on a full basis or in a complete manner effectively. And I think this is, and I'm going to get shot for saying this, but this is why we need to be having the conversation about, do we hire a diversity and inclusion coordinator, someone that can assist, and they would be able to assist in bringing on youth throughout government, including the police engagement board.
Well, you two young ones, David and Sarah, maybe you can think a little bit about some sort of process that we might have here that, you know, if we have students that are interested in forming some sort of government council, governmentship committee, I think we'd all probably be happy to work with them.
I know my proposal. Let's hire a diversity and inclusion coordinator. That's a lot for us as council to take on, and it's also stepping on the toes of those that are already hired as city staff.
Yeah, something for us to think about too. All right, so where are we? We're just going to go with putting Angela in as an alternate? I guess so, for the time being.
But what does that mean? I don't know. For this, how does that limit her ability to function on the commission, is my question.
I think all it it just means that if somebody is missing, which is often, she has the right to vote. That's all. She can participate in every meeting, as she just did with the meeting this week. She was a full participant in the meeting, but when it comes down to a vote on something, somebody would have to be missing for her to sit in for them and vote.
Are we worried about an even number of votes on the commission? I'm not quite sure why 7's magical, I guess, then is the question.
Typically, most commissions will have an uneven number just because of the vote. I mean, I don't know that this is a contentious group. I suspect most things are done by consensus and not by vote. You know, again, I don't think you're going to probably see a lot of 4-3s on this thing, but again, that's the tradition. Robert's rules sort of says it. You want to make sure that your commission can do business and never get caught up in a tie. Now, going back to the role that an alternate can play, I think that can be determined by the chair at any meeting. So even, again, I agree with the mayor, if it is a critical vote and truly contended, now, but they only make recommendations, but the chair could say, look, we're going to let you vote and count your vote anyway, no matter how this plays in. So, you know, again, you're a full participating member if you can do all of those things. And I think that the chair, frankly, has the authority to open that up a little bit to make that happen. I know that if I were going to a meeting, I would certainly want to think that, particularly if I was volunteering my time, I would want to think that it was meaningful. And I think that would give it meaning. I think the chair can expand that.
Yeah. And certainly at the last PCEB meeting, he did that. I mean, nobody thought of Angela as anything less than a full participant.
A full voting member, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what I would really prefer her to not be less than a full participant.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So we will go ahead and appoint Angela. We have 2 others that are seeking to be reappointed. Scott Nixon, who has been on the Board of Adjustment, has asked to be reappointed. Neil, is he a participating member of the Board of Adjustment?
Indeed he is. He's a very important part of that board.
Okay, so we should reappoint him. Anybody oppose that? And the other one is Scott Gresh, who has been a really active member of the PCEB and a very valuable member there. Can we reappoint him? Yes, good. All right, that does it, I think, for our agenda. We have time for a little bit of a break. We've been through our agenda until we meet again at 7:30. Is that okay? Katie, you have an question?
No.
No?
We meet again at 7:30.
We meet again at 7:30, so everybody can go get a cup of coffee or whatever.
I just want to point out that the lighting on Katie's picture is sort of ethereal. I kind of like it, Katie.
Like it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. It's lovely. So, and I'd like to see the full picture behind David.
Yeah, I was wondering about that as well.
Yeah, we'd all like to see.
Oh! There you go.
I didn't know if Hillary was an artist that had signed it or.
No, that's her 2008 campaign photo. I just love it.
Great. Do you have others in your house that we should look at?
No, she's the only politician that I have hanging in my house.
Great.
Mayor, do you want everyone to do an art tour of their houses?
We could do an art tour while we're at it. Art and books. That's the other thing. Everybody's got a book behind them except for me. But I could testing. Mine's in front of me.
I know that our sound is a bit off here, so.
Our sound is off?
My sound is off.
Okay.
I mean, it's on, but it sounds bad.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah.
So 7:30, Mayor?
7:30, guys. We'll be back at 7:30, so take a break. All right, David, let me see that photo again.
Joanne, can you hear me?
That's really cool. That is very cool. Thank you.
I hate this.
Sorry, Jennifer. Yes, I could hear you.
You can hear me? Is it echoey?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what the deal is. Let me turn this off.
Did you have the volume up very loud? I can't hear you.
We turned it down.
Okay, now I can hear you.
You can hear me now?
Yes. It's not that echoey. It's a little bit, but I really think part of it's just the room.
Yeah. Well, I've got them in various things. Okay. Okay. Which is the USB, right?
I guess it's just you and me, Jen.
Looks like it. Neil, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Good deal. Is it echoey?
Ever so slightly, but not in a distracted
Not particularly?
way.
Okay.
No.
All right. So that
Actually sounds very good.
okay, great. I'm gonna turn this up, but I might have to turn that
Do you have a sound? Do you have a soundboard that you have to operate?
no. I have a PDF and
on top of everything else, you have to operate a soundboard?
yeah. I'm gonna turn these up a little bit. I don't know if that's on you.
Mayor, do you ever watch CBS Sunday Morning?
Once in a blue moon, yeah.
I'm far more dedicated to that than I ever was going to mass on Sunday mornings. But they had a show on there last week regarding the centennial of the 19th Amendment. And it was passed ultimately in Tennessee. It became the state where it was confirmed. And it came down to one vote. And it was a legislator who was interviewed by Walter Cronkite in 1963. And they had the interview as part of this show. And he had gotten a letter from his mother right before the vote was taking place. Laura, did you see this, or have you heard this? It was fantastic. He said, look, it came down to this. He said, and my mother had given me direction saying that I needed to vote for this. And when I realized that I was the deciding vote, I knew there was no way I could vote anything but yes. So this momentous decision came down to this young man following what his mother had told him to do, which tells me there's a God and he's got a sense of humor.
The suffragists had counted him in the no column, like decisively. So
Right.
they had given, some of them had left the Capitol and had given up when he voted yes. It was amazing.
They'd taken his mother out of the picture. It was a great, but his interview, Walter Cronkite interviewed him, and it was fabulous. And the guy, I mean, it was really it was actually a very charming interview that was done. It was well worth it. I encourage you to see it.
Yeah, I wonder if we can find that.
You can. All of those things are archived.
Archived on CBS?
It wasn't this last Sunday. It was a week ago Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you go on CBS Sunday morning, it'll be on there.
Did you read My Life as an Altar Boy that Don Corrigan wrote?
I did. I really, really, really liked Jim Gaffigan this weekend too.
I saw that one.
Oh, I think he's hysterical to begin with, but I was just so glad to hear him stand up. I mean, it was a good thing.
Good. Ooh, I have to put my fan on. Whoops. All right.
Sarah?
I think we're at 7:30.
I think we're just waiting for Sarah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sarah just texted me that her internet service just went out and she's going to be here as soon as she can.
Okay.
All right. Then we'll just go ahead and get started with this. And I want to welcome all of you to our City Council meeting this evening. We have quite a few participants. And just so you know, there are instructions about submitting your comments via email, and I'm not going to read those, but we do need to get them by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting. But there is tonight a new piece, because in addition tonight, if you'd like to speak during either remarks of visitors or the public hearing, please use the raise your hand button on Zoom. So for those of you who are out there as attendees, if you want to speak, you need to use the raise your hand button on Zoom and go ahead and hit that. You will be called upon when it is your turn to speak. To ease identification, please use your first and last name when signing into the Zoom session. Public comment will be limited to the designated time frame during each public hearing, and remarks of visitors at the same time. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. So we do have an ability now for the public to provide their comments live. We will not be on there. You will not be on video. You will just be on audio. Okay. So we're going to begin tonight with the roll call.
Mayor Welsh?
Here.
Councilmember Arnold?
Here.
Councilmember Bliss?
Here.
Councilmember Franklin?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Alexander?
Here.
Councilmember Richardson?
Here.
Awesome.
Good. All right, so we have everyone here. We'll begin this evening with two proclamations, and our first proclamation recognizes the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, correct? That's the one that comes first, Katie?
It is actually the Constitution Week is first.
Is first, okay.
Constitution Week is first. And Brenda Bacall has brought this forward from the DAR, and she's listening in.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is our proclamation. Whereas September 17th, 2020 marks the 233rd year anniversary of the drafting of the U.S. Constitution. Whereas it's fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this document and its anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which commemorate this occasion. Whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. So on behalf of the city and the entire City Council, we do want to proclaim September 17th to the 23rd, 2020 as Constitution Week. And we ask our citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. Okay, so Brenda, thank you very much for being here with us and for providing this proclamation for us. Okay,
thank you.
Our next proclamation, and I think Christine Nobby is here with us, and she will accept, oh, there you are. Hi, Christine. And she will accept this proclamation. I think I'm just going to have to hand it to you through the Zoom.
And we also have Jeannie Webdell on.
Oh, and Jeannie is with us also, Jeannie Webdell. Great. They are the co-presidents of the Kirkwood Webster Groves American Association of University Women, and they've brought this proclamation to us. So, whereas 172 years ago in 1848, the first Women's Rights Convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York, marking the beginning of the bold and courageous women's rights movement to gain women the vote. The women's rights movement, as well as other progressive social change movements, was made stronger by the women of Missouri from every race, class, and ethnic background who served on the front line and ultimately played a unique and critical role in Missouri's history. And whereas on June 4th, 1919, the United States Congress passed the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, providing the vote for women, and sent it to the states for ratification. On July 3rd, 1919, Governor Frederick Gardner signed the bill that made Missouri the 11th state to ratify the 19th Amendment. And 100 years ago, on August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment was certified by the U.S. Secretary of State, Bainbridge Colby, and became federal law. Yay. Whereas the city of Webster Groves recognizes that the American Association of University Women, founded in 1881, and its Missouri branches have long been supporters of women's rights, equity, and the 19th Amendment. And whereas the citizens of the city of Webster Groves appreciate the struggles of the suffragettes, and others who fought for the right to vote by all citizens. So on behalf of the city and the City Council, we do hereby proclaim the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, and proclaim Tuesday, September the 8th, as ratification of the 19th Amendment Day in the city of Webster Groves. Yay. Thank you all. What an interesting time in history it must have been to live through this. Would have been very interesting. Thank you, Christine, for bringing this forward, and Jean, we really, really appreciate it. We hope you have one of those yard signs too. Yeah, me too. So,
Mayor, can I take one moment to plug a really exciting book that came out this week, which is called Vanguard by Martha Jones, which is all about the role of Black women in the civil rights movement and the vote and the work that they've done for women's rights over time. I ordered a copy. I can't wait to get it. It fits with this theme. So I took a little privilege there. Thank you.
No, thank you for telling all of us. Vanguard.
Martha Jones is the author.
Okay, great.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. All right, now we're going on to our public hearings, of which we have 2 tonight. The first public hearing is levying and establishing the rate of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2020 by the city of Webster Groves, Missouri. And I think Joanne is the one who is doing that presentation.
Yes, I am. So I'm going to first give the presentation for the city, and then I know the next public hearing is for the library portion. I didn't know if you wanted me to take my PowerPoint off so in the breaks or just leave it up, because it's just one PowerPoint. I just have it separated a bit.
Okay.
So this is for the city itself. This is the assessed valuation comparison, the current valuation versus prior year. And you can see that the numbers have not changed much at all. This is a non-reassessment year, so we would anticipate that. The only numbers really that have changed are when we do the calculations are the consumer price index and new construction. That takes, that would change our numbers very much at all, and they don't. This is the difference between the current year and last year. The ones that are in black with no red beside them are the same this year as they were last year. So you can see that all of the numbers for the city for general operations, street improvements, police and fire pension, and debt service, which are the four areas where we collect property tax for the city, which is residential, commercial, and personal, are all the same as last year. The only difference is for the taxing district, specifically the Old Orchard taxing district is a bit lower for the current year than it was last year for commercial. And then for the Old Webster taxing district, the residential is slightly higher for 2020. And for commercial, it is also slightly higher. And when I say slightly, you can see the difference there. So I wanted to show you what I just mentioned. So the 4 areas that we collect taxes for, and these are 4 separate funds. So the bond redemption would be the general obligation debt service fund. The general fund obligations would be the general fund. Street improvements is that particular fund. And then the police and fire pension plan, which is another fund. So we have 4 funds that actually receive money from property taxes. And these are the rates. Again, they're the same as last year. And then I also wanted to demonstrate for you what the percentage of the tax bill that is collected by the city of Webster Groves, how that's split up. You can see that bond redemption is the highest percentage. Right now, we owe about $10 million in debt. About $5 million is still from the debt we issued in 2011, which is the general obligation debt for the street improvements. And then the others is for the close to $5 million is for Firehouse 2. Also wanted to show you how the city rates have changed in the past 10 years with you seeing the highest blip here in the green, the police and fire pension. That is because our voters approved an increase to the police and fire pension for a benefit increase for their pension plan. So that's where the big blip is there. Fortunately, we haven't had tremendous increases except right in 2017 and 2018. It has already dropped off in 2019 and 2020 from what Missouri loggers, their actuary calculates for our contribution. So our levy hasn't had to be as much as what was approved by our voters. So it's worked out very well. Even in this year, and I'll give you an update on that at some point if you'd like, the defined benefit plan is still doing very well for us with loggers. This is a summary sheet that I like to share every year of all of the taxing jurisdictions that a Webster Groves resident would have to pay on their top property tax bill. And I just put these in the order from the top tax rate to the lowest rate. So sometime, I just want to clarify this, and this is from 2019. The reason it's not 2020 is because I don't know what the other rates are yet, because they're doing the same thing that we are doing right now, where they're proposing their rates. So all these numbers in here are from 2019 with the exception of ours, which is the same as last year. So Webster Groves School District sets their own rates, and theirs are higher, part of which is because we have a much more residential community than others, other communities. We don't have as much commercial, so the rate that's charged bears a greater cost onto the residents of Webster Groves than it would in other jurisdictions where there's more commercial property. Special School District is the second one. We are the second highest at 0.717. At the right-hand side, I'm showing the tax amounts. So at the very bottom, if your tax bill, this is for a home, and I just put this number in because the math was easy to calculate. If the value of the home is $250,000, the appraised value, then the assessed value is 19% of that, which is $47,500, and that's how the math is calculated on that. So if your total tax bill is at the bottom in bold, which is $3,725.28, then what you pay to Webster Groves is $340.58 of that. We do not receive any of these other amounts. They're all paid to those particular entities. The exception to that is Webster Library. We receive that because we have a shared services agreement and we record that information for them. This is another example, but I wanted to show you one more item, and that's the percentage of the tax bill. So it's the same numbers, but you can see that from that calculation of the total tax bill, the city of Webster Groves receives about 9.1% of the total tax bill. And I believe, yes, this is the library, so I will stop now. Do I have any questions?
Are there any questions? I wanted to add a comment because we've been working so hard, as mentioned earlier, for those COVID funds. Those folks who are served by a fire protection district have an extra line on their property tax. In some places, in one place in particular, rate is over $3 per 100. And because it's a property tax, it's a stable tax. So those folks who are served by a fire protection district pay for it out of their property tax, and there's a big lump that's added to their tax. This is why we're arguing so much about getting some funds from COVID, is because our paying for fire protection and EMS and ambulance services comes out of our general fund. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Joanne, do you want to go ahead and show the property tax one while this is up here? Do you think that's okay? For that,
for the library?
Yes. Or do you want to wait?
I don't mind doing either. It doesn't matter. I don't know if we need to do the readings a certain way with the
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Maybe we better, let's just go ahead and do the readings and
let's make sure there's no comments from the public. I don't believe there is.
No? Thank you, Katie. Are there any comments from the public? Are there any hands up? Do you see any? No hands up?
No, Mayor.
Okay, with no comments from council, then Neil, I think you can close this public hearing.
I'd move to close the public hearing and admit the documents, the PowerPoint presentation relied upon by City Manager Joanne Jadali.
All right, and with that, the public hearing is closed and we will go to bill number 9127. And David Franklin, could you call for the first and second readings?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of bill number 9127.
Second.
Bill 9127, first reading. An ordinance levying and establishing the rate of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2020 by the City of Webster Groves, Missouri, and repealing Ordinance 9086.
Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, let's do that second reading.
Second reading. An ordinance levying and establishing the rate of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2020 by the City of Webster Groves, Missouri, and repealing Ordinance number 9086.
All right, we'll move on to the next public hearing, which we'd like to open, which is levying and establishing the rate of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2020 for the Webster Groves Library District. Joanne.
So this is the assessed valuation for the library. The numbers are the same as they were for the city with the exception of personal property. So these are the proposed rates that we have, and they're very similar again to what we did. I should have done a better comparison on this too, but these numbers are very similar to what we had for the city, and because the levies didn't change except for personal property, they're the same. So if this is just the residential piece that I like to show every year. You can see how again for it's the same number for 2019 and 2020. Now these, I didn't mention this before, but these are pre-Board of Equalization numbers. I don't anticipate the numbers to change much at all. If they do, I will have revised numbers that are the final Board of Equalization numbers that I will present for third reading. And then I'll ask you to amend it at that time. But again, I don't anticipate it. Usually we don't have issues like this for these years when it's a non-reassessment year. And I believe that's, oh, I wanted to show you this one. So this is also a slide that I've done for the last 10 years that show the library rates, the residential rates, and how they've declined. And that's my last slide.
Thank you. Are there any questions or issues from council? Is there anyone out there in the public raising their hand?
No, Mayor.
Okay, no questions, no issues? Yes, Karen.
So, and you may have said this before, Joanne, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but when we looked at the residential items, there was a line item in there for the library that was 2.9. So is that this same thing, but this is just broken down?
This is just the residential part. So this again is the same sheet. So they have a section that is just for the library. Then this is the temporary for their bond, because they had to take out that the debt for the improvement to the library. So that's the library temp piece, that middle piece here. And then the total is the residential total of 2.24, the commercial total of 0.222, and the personal property, which is 0.315. So I displayed it in a different format, but the way their property taxes would be done would be for your home, it would be 0.224 times the assessed valuation of your property divided by 100.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Hearing none, go ahead, Neil, and close this, please.
Upon them having finished, I would move for the admission of the PowerPoint relied upon by City Manager Joanne Jadali in this matter.
All right. All right, with that, let's go to Bill 9128. Councilwoman Arnold, could you call for it, please?
Yes, Mary, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9128.
Second.
Bill 9128, first reading. An ordinance levying and establishing the rate of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2020 for the Webster Groves Library District and repealing ordinance 9087.
Any questions or issues? Let's do that second reading.
Second reading. An ordinance levying and establishing the rate of annual property taxes to be collected for the year 2020 for the Webster Groves Library District and repealing ordinance 9087.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to remarks of visitors. And Katie, I think we're going to read first, correct?
Right, we have 3 email remarks of visitors, and we'll start now.
Okay. Our first one is from Danielle Brazzini, and it was received on August 17th. All right. The projected deficit for fiscal year 2020 was $600,000, and the reality was $968,000. The projected deficit for fiscal year 2021 is $1 million. What if it is worse like this year's budget? What if this new economy worsens or fails to improve for years? If there are no sales, there are no sales taxes collected and no money to run the government. The city should adjust like everyone else to the new economy and heed the advice of a stitch in time saves 9. The sooner the city of Webster pares down to supporting the necessary services, police, fire, EMS, schools, and infrastructure, the less severe and disruptive it will be later. Praying for more taxation is no salvation when so many Webster Groves businesses have closed and people have suffered the loss of jobs and wage cuts. Chief Justice John Marshall wisely said, "The power to tax is the power to destroy." Please make the tough decisions you were elected to make now versus planning on running out of money for necessary services later in order to force a taxation solution on the already hard-pressed and highly taxed citizens of Webster Groves. Our next one was received on August 27th from Madeline Roche, and it says, please consider significantly downsizing the SG Webster redevelopment project. I live incredibly close to the proposed area and just recently moved to this community based on its charm and inclusiveness. Please try to keep the development in line with what is already here. And then our last one is from Dave Buck, and that was received today. Dear our excellent mayor, city council, and city staff. Years ago, the book 1 Minute Manager became an overnight sensation. Its entire premise boiled down to one sentence. People who feel good about themselves produce good results. And feeling good about yourself is all about having a positive and healthy self-esteem. Applied to Webster Groves, I believe that residents who feel good about themselves are good neighbors and produce good results for our community. City council and staff dedicates the great portion of your time and energy to addressing rational and tangible issues of importance. But to me, the other essential part of your role is fulfilling the emotional and intangible need of your residents to feel good about themselves as valued members of our community. Here are 2 small personal examples from this past week that were big to me. David Franklin sent me a 1-sentence email of thanks concerning my song video of "We Didn't Start the Fire Webster Style." I really appreciate David, and it made me feel good. Thank you. Jerry Welch sent me a very insightful email regarding my very personal World Peacemakers platform and plan. I really appreciate Jerry, and it made feel good results. Thank you. As such, I believe there is a multiplier effect with such praise, gratitude, or recognition, because when people feel good about themselves, they are inspired to keep going, do more, and produce even better results. And if you can share such recognition publicly, it is even more powerful and lasting. Why is this important? Because as important as your rational and tangible efforts are, I believe that it is the emotional and intangible things that are the glue that binds and holds our community together. And in so doing, the entire community of Webster Groves can feel good about itself and produce good results for us, the state, the nation, and the world. In closing, I fervently believe that in a world and nation filled with way too much hate, intolerance, and division, and way too little love, unity, and hope, the world needs Webster Groves to be the beacon of hope that it is to inspire and change the world. Thank each and every one of you. Peace, Dave.
Let's check and make sure there's no hands raised.
Yes.
No hands raised.
No hands raised, Mayor.
No hands raised. Okay, then we can Then we can move on. We have no new business to announce. We'll move on to bill number 9129. And I'll ask Councilwoman Bliss to call for the first, second, and I guess we'll have to do, after the second one, we'll have to do another vote to do the third one. So let's do the first and second, Neil.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of bill number 9129.
Second.
Bill 9129,
Wait,
first
no,
reading.
did you get a second, Katie?
Second.
Laura, yes.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Neil. Sorry.
That's all right. Bill 9129, first reading. An ordinance of the City of Webster Groves amending the City Code, Chapter 4, Article 20, Section 4.1200, quote, Police Community Engagement Board, unquote, by adding one alternate member position.
All right. Are there any?
Yes, there is a question. I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
So did we determine that that is going to be as an alternate member or just a regular, or is that something that they determined within the board, that the president of the board that they vote on? Was that a decision made?
My understanding was that you're just doing this as an alternate position, but if the question was, will she basically have the same role as a regular board member, the answer was yes, that can be determined by the chair at the actual commission meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, why don't, you know what, I'll just make the motion. I'll motion for us to make her a regular board member.
Well, here's the problem with that. You don't have, your existing structure says 5 members. So adding a 6th member, which you can do, but we'd actually have to change the ordinance to do that. Now, again, could we just simply say by changing this to create a 6th member? And actually, you could probably do that. You could probably do that, David.
So our consists of 8 members, you mean?
Yes,
right
it
now
would then consist. Yeah, so instead of, but the section that says you're appointing 5 members, you would change that to say you're appointing 6. So it'd be the first paragraph that you're changing.
Okay. So I will amend my motion to amend the ordinance so that we appoint 6 members to the Police Community Engagement Board.
So you could say by adding 1 member position or 1 additional member
by adding one
position.
Adding one general member position to the Police Community Engagement Board.
I second that.
Does this, would it be wise for us to include that person be a resident of Webster Groves? Or is that, Neil, I can't see the full ordinance, so is that covered in another place in the ordinance, or do we need to make that clear as well?
Well, I think it is covered. Let me pull it up real quickly, Laura.
I know there's a couple sections that probably need to be looked at.
For some reason, it's not pulling up. Hold on. Here it is.
I can just amend it just to include it. That way there's no question. That way they'd be a member of, not only are we adding the 6th member, or 1 additional member, but that 1 additional position has to be a resident of the City of Webster Groves.
Just to clarify, it looks like when I'm reading the ordinance, it would be 8 members if you add that 1, because it looks like the Police Community Engagement Board shall consist of 7 members and 1 alternate. So it's not 5, it's 6. I mean, it's like.
But there's 5 general members, and there's
That's
2
what
that
you're
have
referring to.
specific assignments. Yeah.
Got it.
So in the first paragraph, which talks about 5 general members, you would change that to 6.
Got it. Sorry about
that. Okay. No problem. So, David, if we just amend that first paragraph to include 1 general member, I think, Laura, it already has a provision that says, and I'm not able to pull it up, and Joanne, if you have it right there, does it say that they have to be Webster residents? I think it does. I think it's only the business person that doesn't have to be a resident.
I actually have it here that I pulled up. There's 2 sections. The section that this current ordinance is amending is 4.1200, and that's creating the board of 7 members. And that's 4.1200A. And then 4.1205 is the membership qualifications. And so there are different categories there. The first one is the not less than 5 members shall be residents. And then
so
there's.
We'd have to change. I'm
no,
sorry, Jennifer.
No, go ahead. Well, you could probably change both. We'll change the original, what we had in the new ordinance, and instead of saying 7 members and 1 alternate, just say 8 members. And then we'll change, we can bump that number 1, no less than 5 to 6.
Whatever she just said, I think that's right.
Second.
So I think maybe if we can let Angela serve, maybe we should clean this up properly and bring it back.
Well, I think we can. I think we can and will.
Okay.
So we could appoint her now on that amendment. We can clean up the language and bring it back.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to appoint her. We're going to appoint her. We're going to pass this so we can appoint her, and then we'll come back and clean it up. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So we have, David, you made some sort of motion that you need to withdraw.
Yeah, I'll withdraw any motion that I made, and any motion that Jen helps me make.
You were so eloquent too, David.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jennifer.
One of my finer moments.
Okay, so let's have that second reading, Neil.
Let's see, which one was I reading? Bill 9129, an ordinance of the City of Webster Groves amending the City Code, Chapter 4, Article 20, Section 4.1200, Police Community Engagement Board, created by adding 1 member position.
Alternate member position.
Alternate member position.
Okay, so now we can do a third reading if the council agrees to do that. And I think we need to ask someone to make a motion to do a third reading this evening.
So
maybe that's where David needs to step up.
Yes, there's a compelling reason to approve it this evening.
Come on, David. Could you say that there's a compelling reason tonight to do a third reading?
Well, I think that the Police Community Engagement Board is extremely important, especially in these times. I think there's a compelling reason based off the social injustice and the uprisings that we see that we would want a full and complete membership in our Police Community Engagement Board.
So,
well done, David.
Are you moving for a third reading?
Yes, that would be for a third reading, and that would have been the compelling reason. Sorry.
Thank you. Is there a second on that?
Second.
All right. All right. Now let's take any discussion on David's motion. Then let's take a vote on that.
Yes. Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welch?
Yes. All right. So now, Neil, you can do the third reading.
Bill 9129, third reading, an ordinance of the City of Webster Groves amending the City Code, Chapter 4, Article 20, Section 4.1200, Police Community Engagement Board, created by adding 1 alternate member position.
All right. No further discussion. Let's call for the vote.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welch?
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
All right. I think we've taken care of that. Thank you very much. And we'll get this cleaned up. All right. Council Member Emerson, could you call for 9130, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of bill number 9130.
Have a second.
Bill 9130, first reading. An ordinance levying the cost of abating certain nuisances, title search, cut, trim, debris, etc., as special tax bills against the properties hereinafter described and constituting levies as liens on the respective properties.
Any issues or questions? Then do the second reading, please.
Bill 9130, second reading. An ordinance levying the cost of abating certain nuisances, title search, cut, trim, debris, etc., as special tax bills against the properties hereinafter described and constituting levies as liens on the respective properties.
All right, we will move on. Does anyone care to remove anything from the consent agenda? If not, Councilwoman Alexander, could you call for its approval?
Yes, Mayor, I call for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welsh?
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
All right, our next agenda item is appointments to boards and commissions, and we have appointed Angela Brooks to the Police Community Engagement Board. Mr. Nixon, Scott, is that his, Scott Nixon?
Scott, yes, ma'am.
We've reappointed him to the
Board of Adjustment?
Board of Adjustment, and we have appointed Scott Gresh, reappointed him to the Police Community Engagement Board. All right, now I need for someone to call for a motion to go into executive closed session.
And this, by the way, should be for personnel reasons, number 3, and attorney-client privileged communications.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive closed session for number 1, attorney-client privileged communications, Missouri Statute 610.021, open paren 1, close paren, and number 3, personnel, Missouri Statute 610.021, open paren 3, close paren.
Second.
Councilmember Smith? Councilmember Smith?
Emerson, we can't hear you. You're muted. Put your thumb up if it's a yes. Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Alexander?
Twice.
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welsh?
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
All right, we will close this down. If you need a minute or two, do your minute or two, and we'll come back into an executive closed session that will actually come in 2 parts. The first part, we will be with Neil and another guest. And then the second part, we will be with Neil and a different guest. Okay? All right. Thank you.